Hi, I'm Loren Erickson, Urban and Community Forestry Partnership Coordinator with the Mississippi Forestry Commission. Welcome to our Ask an Arborist series, where today we're going to show you how to properly plant a tree. You want to go ahead and mix the soil in the hole before you pull it out. That way you don't have any clumps of clay when you put the soil back in during the backfilling process. Once you've got the approximate depth, you can go ahead and measure the root ball. Make sure that you're not taking the tree in and out of the hole a bunch of times and not planting it too deep, which is the #1 cause of death in newly planted trees. You can lay it on its side, leaving the pot on there so that the sun and wind don't dry out the roots while you're doing the digging. And once you're pretty confident that you've got it where it needs to be, you can go ahead and pull the bucket off. Now you want to investigate and inspect the roots, making sure there's no circling or girdling roots or any roots that are going to grow around and cut the tree off later from nutrients and water. You can use a handsaw, you can use a hand pruner, as long as you've sterilized it with a little bit of rubbing alcohol first, so you're not introducing pathogens into the newly planted tree. Once you've rolled the tree over, made sure that you've got any roots that you see or any that you feel with your hands, you can go ahead and tease them out a little bit, and then you're ready to put the tree into the tree planting hole. You can measure a second time to be sure before you finally place it, and once you're sure that you're right on target, you can go ahead and rock the tree into the hole very gently and straighten it up before you find what's called the topmost root. Now that's going to be the root that indicates the root flare, and making sure that that wasn't covered up by the nursery or covered up during the planting process. You don't want any soil additional over that very first root that you find. Once you get any sort of weeds or excess soil away from it, you can start to backfill the tree. You're just going to push it using a rake. You can use a shovel, but what we don't do anymore is stomp it with our foot or use a shovel handle to tamp down. It just creates holes that won't be filled. What's nicer to do is to go ahead and water it thoroughly the very first time. That will settle out any rabbit holes. That'll also find any air pockets that you might have. You can use the remaining soil to go ahead and start building a berm and a nice flat basin, so that when water or rain hits that tree area, it's going to go ahead and be retained in that tree basin, and it will run out to the edge where the soil, the existing soil, meets the roots of the tree you're planting, the interface area. That's where the action's at. That's where the roots are going to grow initially. Now you can continue to tidy up as you do so, building a slight berm that will retain some of that water. And we're going to soak it in real well the very first time. And once you've got complete saturation and you know that it's settled, you can go ahead and reestablish that basin again. The most important part being that it's not going to run off of the tree if there's a hard rain or if it's watered by hand a lot of times. And we're going to keep the integrity of that tree well. Any raking we do is for appearance, but also to keep the berm intact and to make sure that we've got a solid, well-planted tree, but that it's in a nice tree planted area. For the next few years, it should thrive in that spot. Then we're going to mulch. We're using wood chip mulch here. It's not dyed. There are no pigments to it. And when this breaks down, it will add something to the soil composition, but it also keeps weeds from sprouting and it retains moisture. They've also found that it cools the surface of the soil by as much as 25 to 40 degrees during hot summer days. That's why we use a light colored mulch. Being sure here not to put it up against the trunk of the tree again, and just raking in for appearance, but also to make sure that nothing was broken down, the berm stayed intact, and that anything that touches this tree, whether it's natural water or watered by hand or irrigation, is going to be retained in that root growth zone. And that's really what we're looking for. And that is a well-planted tree. The last thing you want to do is really soak it again, just to keep the wood chips so they don't wick away moisture from the newly planted root ball. And also, it's the most important watering of a tree's life, is the very first one. So that is a well-planted tree that will thrive in this spot. It'll be a nice addition to this location. And that's the way that you plant a tree.